Let's see. There we go. Hey guys, how are you? I'm happy to see you. Like Nicole said, my name's Elizabeth. I am from Charlotte, North Carolina, and it is a cold day here in Charlotte, but it is our last day of school. How about you guys? Are you still in school or are you out? Some of my friends have been out all week long, and for that, I'm jelly. Some of you are going a couple more days. So let us know. Let us know where you are tuning in from and how old you are, because it will help me direct the class. I think we had a whole bunch of people signed up for this class, but we're slowly coming in. I think people have a lot of last minute gifts to be buying, and I am one of those gals. I did some last minute shopping today on my lunch break. So I get it. But thankfully, this class is being recorded, like Nicole said. So you'll be able to see it on YouTube tomorrow in case you missed anything or in case you had a pally who wanted to join and they could not. So please make sure that they catch the YouTube. I'm going to switch my camera around so that you can see what I see. Oh, I guess I bumped it. I had it all right. There we go. There we go. Okay, so as you can tell, if you have joined me in the past, I am in a different place. I'm downstairs in my kitchen, sitting at my island because I wanted extra space for gift wrapping because I know some of you do not have little packages like this. And so I wanted to make sure to have enough space to wrap a shirt box if you did not have little boxes like I do. So before we get going, I would love to see your presents all wrapped. Let's see how you did it. And so if you would tag us at Learn with Michael so we can see that, or at I should say at La Cozy Casita. That is me on Instagram, or Elizabeth Barrick everywhere else. I would love to see that. And or you could hashtag Michael's Kids Club so we could see that as well. So we really want to see your finished project. We can't see you, and this is a way that we can participate. And this is a way that we can communicate with one another, and that's super fun. So if your adult says go and your adult does it, then that's a-okay with us. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be using this brown paper, but if you do not have the brown craft paper from Creatology, just use what you got. But this is what we're going to be using. And we'll see how much time we have. I would love to make some gift tags with you and wrap some boxes, okay? So I would like to start, I think the most productive first thing to do would be to do the box. That way you can, if you have more things to wrap, you can wrap and watch, or however you like. Usually we'd like to start with the painting so it will dry, but just in case, I want to make sure that I teach the main thing, which is the gift wrapping, okay? So for gift wrapping, you're gonna need your wrapping paper, and you are going to need, I'm using some butcher's twine here, or ribbon you could use. You're gonna need some tape and scissors, of course. You can use your scissors that came out of your craft case. I've got bigger hands, so I'm gonna be using some bigger scissors, but you can use these because these will be better for you to use with your smaller hands. And let's see here. Oh, I thought this was just the cutest little thing, like a little Rudolph. Wasn't that cute? So if you chose the brown paper, if you have a solid paper, then we're going to make a little Rudolph with a little pom-pom nose. Isn't he so cute? And a little tag. And I'm using red construction paper, but you can use what you've got. You could even use some extra of the brown paper if you'd like to make your tag. Okay. And let's see, did I get it? Oh, little Google eyes. Okay. I have a big box, but you have some in your craft case that you can use. All right. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to clear out a little bit of space, and then that'll give us some time for some shout out. we had any. Maybe nobody's chimed in yet.
Lindsay said hi from Buffalo.
Hey, Lindsay. How old are you, Lindsay? And I wonder if we have any repeat students. That's always super fun to hear. Okay, move this stuff out of the way. I bet it is cold in Buffalo, Lindsay. Brr, brr. Okay, I am going to start with a shirt box. Okay. The reason why I would like to start with the shirt box is because this is what is the most accessible, I should say. This is what you probably have in your house. A lot of people have them, or if you go shopping at the department stores, they'll say, oh, would you like a box? And you say, yes, I would. And now you can buy these even at the craft stores. So that's fun. Okay, so a shirt box. And usually in a shirt box, you will put some tissue paper. So if you don't have tissue paper, no big deal. But what I like to do, I'm going to try to go even higher here, and I might even start standing up just so I could get a better aerial view. Okay, so let me put my tape up here. Put this little guy here so you can get a better. Okay, so shirt boxes can be a little bit tricky because they're a little flimsy. And so if you already have a box, like a box already set up, you probably don't have to do this part. See, this is an old box, and we like to recycle boxes because if you get a good box, you got to keep it. So this box is sturdy, it's not flimsy, and so I don't have to do anything more to this box. But you can see that a shirt box is pretty flimsy. Okay, so I'm going to teach you what to do with the shirt boxes to make them a little sturdier. And that is to tape them on the inside. So you just open up this corner here, and you're going to just tape each of these corners just to make it a little less flimsy. You can even tape the top here. Seems like sometimes you get really sturdy ones, and sometimes they're a little flimsier. There we go. So that helps when I got the crease there. So see how this is kind of bending in right there? If I put a piece of tape on that bend, it's going to keep it from folding in as much. And then just right here where it's coming off, do you see that? I'm going to put a piece of tape right there as well. And I'm going to do that for every side, all four sides. So that's kind of the first step, because if you do not start with a nice sturdy box, it's a little tricky. It's a little bit tricky. So that's the first step, making sure that you have a nice and sturdy box. I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I do here. Okay.
And Elizabeth, we do have a few more shout outs when you're ready.
Okay. I'll show you guys one more time this one last step. See how it's bending in right there? And you might have a sturdier box, but mine's not. So I'm going to tape right here where those two ends come together and fold it over. And woo, that did the trick right there. See that? Sometimes it just takes one piece of tape. So I'm going to do that on the lid now. And then I want to hear those shout outs. Let me get you guys back up here. All right. Go ahead, Nicole.
So we have Ella from Washington, who says that she is 8 years old.
Hey, Ella.
And then we have Boss Queen EJ, who is a repeat student. She works with adults and people with disabilities of all ages. and she's from
Oh,
Panama, and the weather is very spring-like. She loves your
oh
class
wow.
and says you are a wonderful teacher.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love that you're becoming a regular. That's so awesome.
And Lindsay
Cool.
says, "Hi, I'm 28 and I have cerebral palsy, and I really enjoy these classes, and it is really cold today."
Hey, Lindsay, that's so awesome. I love that these kids' classes aren't just for kids. And that's what Nicole said herself today. She said, hey, I'm going to learn something today too, which I think
It's
is
true.
pretty cool. So, welcome, all of you. So, let's see. I just noticed, yikes, that I'm almost out of tape. So,
Oh
we might have
no.
to have an intermission here. That was the one thing I forgot to check on. So, let me see here. I'm going to put those here. I do not. I really hope. But then maybe we'll do another strategy without tape. Okay, so I just placed. I did that without even talking it through, guys. Sorry about that. I got sidetracked by the tape. Okay, so I've got 2 pieces of tissue paper. I actually have 3 here, and I just kind of laid it on top of the tissue paper. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of push it towards the ends here. So I'm just kind of spreading it out. Now, you do have to be a little careful because if you spread out too much, you're going to tear your tissue paper. Okay. So you just kind of give it some space down here and then push it through. Okay. So give it some room to meet. See right here where my hand is? And then I have all that space. So what I need to do is inch my hand more towards the wall. And then I can come over. Okay. All right. So in this box, the lucky recipient is going to receive my backpack pulls that I made in one of my very first Michael's classes. Just an idea for you all. If you're looking for last minute gifts and you have taken my classes, you probably have some extra backpack pulls that maybe your big brother or little sister would like. So there's an idea. Okay, so I'm going to set those in here. Now, if you don't want these wiggling around, it would be cool and even an extra fun little surprise to have a present wrapped inside of a present. Who does not like a present wrapped inside of a present? So, what you can then do is I just folded another piece of tissue paper and I'm just going to kind of, let me move this out of the way so you can see, okay? So I got this little sunny guy, the happy face backpack pull, and I just folded my tissue paper like this. Now I'm going to fold one way over, fold over again. Now, if I just leave it like this, guess what's going to happen when the box shifts or you're super excited and you're like, oh, what's this in this gift? And someone shakes it. If you're a shaker, who's a shaker out there? Well, guess what's going to happen? It's going to fall right out of the bottom. So what you have to do is you have to create a little pouch for it. Okay. So you can either do your folds and fold up, or you can fold up this way and make a little ledge, little envelope, if you want to say it. Okay. So I fold it over once. I'm going to go ahead and fold over the top down and fold over one more time. That way, nothing's going to come out of that. Okay. And you can even put a piece of tape here. I'm a little worried now about my tape, so I'm not going to put a piece of tape there because I don't want to leave you guys to go find tape. I can't believe I left. Nicole knew I was running all my errands and then I forgot to check the tape. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and do that with my ice cream, and I'm going to do a twofer in this one. I'm just going to put them both in. Okay.
We have a
So
couple more
you're
shout
making.
outs, Elizabeth, whenever you're ready.
All right. Yeah, go for it.
So Caroline says, hi from Knoxville. This is my first class. I just turned 10 this week.
Hey, Caroline from Knoxville. Welcome and happy birthday. What's it like to have a birthday so close to Christmas?
Right. And then we also have Cora and Kimber from Arizona. Kimber is 6 and Cora is 41. And I said it's a class for kids of all ages. So
It really is. It really, really is. Welcome. Okie doke. So now I just placed my 2 little pouches in here. And so if you wanted, you could put a little ribbon around here. You wouldn't have to, but you could. And so now remember that tissue that we put in our box? We're just going to fold that over. Fold this over. Now this would be the perfect time to put a beautiful little sticker right here if you wanted to. A Christmas sticker or a Christmas label. You could do that. Or you could just put a little piece of tape. You don't have to, but if you would just like to make it look a little more finished, you could do that. Now we're going to put the lid on. Okay. So make sure everything is tucked into your shirt box or your box. And by tucking it in, you're gently going to push in the side, just gently. You did a lot of work to make sure that your box was nice and straight. So you don't want to push in those corners again that we worked so hard to do. Okay. So you want to make sure you're closed all the way. So I was not quite closed on this last edge here. Make sure you're closed all the way. And that you could see that was concave just a little bit, but when I look on the outside of my box, everything is nice and flat. And that's what you're looking for. If your box is kind of wobbly and loose, then your present isn't going to turn out nice and crisp like this. Does that make sense? So you want to make sure that your box start with a nice straight box so that you don't have wobbles. Okay. All right. And now let's see if I don't know if we have any more shout outs.
we do
Oh,
actually.
okay. And while you do that, I'm going to see if I can find some.
That sounds great. So we have Nayland from Charlotte, North Carolina, who will be 6 on Thursday. We have
I
Alyssa.
think I know that, Neeland. Neeland, I know you. We go to the same church together. Welcome, Neeland. I'm so glad you're here. That is so fun. Thanks for joining us.
And then we have Alyssa, who is 8 and lives in Spokane.
Ooh,
And then we
Spokane.
have Ella Kate, who is 9, and this is her first class.
Welcome. I love a first timer. That's so fun. Okay. Let me see here. I found some glue dots, so I might just have to use those. Desperate times. Okay. That was perfect. All right. Are you guys ready for the wrapping? Here we go. Okay. So I'm going to fun part. I had all this cleaned off, but I have a lot of fun supplies, a lot of variations. So I wanted to bring them all because, sometimes I talk about my fox origami class a lot because that was such a fun class, but we were just making origami like no one's business. We just kept going and going and going. And so I always want to make sure I have enough supplies here to make sure we keep going. Okay, so here's my craft paper. And so what you're going to do, let me see if I can't pull up even more. Again, this is why I came down away from my craft room because I wanted to get good aerial views for you. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to make sure that we have enough paper to wrap all around our box, okay? This happens to the best of us, where we cut our paper and then we realize, uh-oh, I have a big gap, and then you have to patch a piece of paper there. We've all been there. It happens all the time. If it happens to you, no worries. It's okay. Just make that the bottom of the box. Okay, so the best way I think to do this is to make sure that you kind of slide your box down towards the roll. So here's my roll, okay? So I'm gonna slide my box to the roll. Now I'm gonna just see if my paper covers the box. And I'm just moving just so I can make sure that I'm in the shot, but you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so I moved it down and uh-oh, I'm not gonna have enough space. Let me show you. I need to make sure I have enough space. Now, you don't wanna make so much space that now you're wasting Kraft or your wrapping paper, right? So it's the Goldilocks effect. You don't want it too big, not too small, but just right. Okay, so let me just move it down a little more towards my roll. Here's my roll over here on this side. I'm moving my box towards my roll. I'm gonna fold my paper over. Let's see, does it come to the end? Oh yes, it does. It comes, and I wanna give myself more space. So see what I'm doing here? I'm just kind of gently pushing, and it's hard to see because it's not printed paper. I only have a little bit of overlap. I'm gonna keep coming just tiniest bit more, just a little bit more. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to cut. So, oh, the other thing I want to tell you, make sure that your box isn't like this when you cut, okay? So make sure the edge of your box is in line. We call this parallel, okay? When two lines match like train tracks, we call that parallel. Make sure they're parallel, okay? As best as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect, just make sure it's kind of in the same, just so it's not like that and you're cutting kind of crooked, okay? So now I'm done with my wrapping paper. I can set that aside. All right, now I have enough here. Let me go up even further. I promise this is not a mess in here. It's just all my crafts that I brought down. Got all my piles. Okay. Okay, so now this is the top, okay? This is the top of our box. But what we have to do is flip our box side down, but it's a good thing we made those pouches, remember? So now we can be sure that our gifts are stuck in their pouch and they're not going to slide out. So it'll still be a surprise when your person opens their box. So I'm going to flip my box upside down. Remember that big word we use, parallel. Sure your lines are straight, and I'm going to make sure my camera's straight. All right, you see that? So now I am going to, again, not like this, because when you fold it, you're going to have a wonky fold. See how that's kind of crooked? Make sure your box matches the bottom. And you got to check the top too, kiddos. Check the top. Make sure you're going to have enough space. Okay? Make sure. And this is the perfect width for a shirt box. Now, some wrapping papers are too long or too short. So make sure too that you have enough on each side as well. Okay? All right. So we're ready for the first tape. So what I'm doing is I'm making sure to keep my box flat on the table, and I don't want my box to move. I'm going to bring this paper up, but I don't want it to move, okay? And I'm bringing it what's called taut. I'm bringing it kind of tight to the box, okay? I'm not bringing it so it's loose over here. Bring it so it's nice and tight or taut to the box. And I'm going to put a piece of tape to keep everything straight. So remember, my tape is in short supply, so I'm going to use just a little bit. And I guess that's a good lesson learned, right? We don't need to pull a big piece of tape. You just need enough to keep the wrapping in its place. And you really don't need as small as I'm doing, but we need a commercial break. Okay, so there we have it. That's our first. And you can see mine's not perfect. See that? It's not perfect, and that's okay. As long as it's not like going way on the diagonal like that, you don't want to see that. But if it's a little, it's okay. Now, on this side, I always like to double check to make sure it's going to cover, okay? If you cut your paper and when you folded it, it comes way over here, it's too long, okay? So you're going to want to trim it. But if it covers your box and it lands somewhere on the back of your box, you are good to go, right? So what I'm going to do, because when we cut, we don't always cut straight. So what I like to do to finish the edge is I like to make a fold. So the way we do this, now some of you might just want to go straight in like this and fold, but we're learning a new word tonight and it's parallel. And so you got to make sure that the end of your paper matches the end of this paper here. You see that? So watch me zoom in so you can see what that looks like, okay? Don't want to make you dizzy. But it's gonna. Okay. So I'm just gonna hold it. There we go. Do you see? Let me move it up. So you wouldn't fold it here, but you would fold it right there. So those two ends match. Do you see what I'm looking at right here? You want those ends to match up. Okay. And let me come back up because my camera is not cooperating with me. And I've got one hand working right now. There we go. Tighten it. It said, I am tired of you zooming in and out on me. That's what it's saying to me. Ah. If I get, this is the Goldilocks effect too, just right. I'll move the stand. There we go. Okay, Mr. Camera, I promise I will stop bothering you. Let's just get it right even here. There we go. Okay. Here we go. So this is even Steven. And now you're going to make a fold all the way up. And it should be even up here then because you were really good about making it even down here. Okay. Wow. Look at how crooked my cutting was. Now you can really tell. Okay. So remember, we want this nice and tight. So when you kind of push gently on the box, gently, because you don't want to tear, a gentle push, make sure everything is nice and tight or taut. Then you're going to fold this over. There we go. Look at that. We're doing it. We're doing it, y'all. Okay, you need one piece of tape here and one piece of tape here. Okay, it's like I'm scared to use the tape because I don't know when I'm gonna need it next. What did I do with my little roll? All right, little itty bit is almost the end zone here. Put that on the wish list, right? On the Christmas pickup list. More tape.
And
Okay.
Elizabeth, we did have another shout out.
Oh, yes.
So we have Oni, who is 9 years old, who came to join us tonight. So,
hey, Oni, I'm so glad you're here. I like your name. Oh, and we can always improvise. So if you run out of tape, like your dear old instructor, you could use glue stick. You could use your craft glue. And I found these little glue dots that I'm sure your parents have hanging around somewhere. So where
my
there's a
mother
will,
used
there's a way.
medical tape. So,
oh, there you go. There you go. Okay, so now I'm going to give you 2 views of this, okay? I'm going to give you the aerial view this way for how to fold the end, and then I'm going to put it up like this so that you can see how to fold it this way, okay? So there's going to be 2 ways to fold the end. So what we're going to do, now remember we taped our box, so now our box isn't going to go sliding. If you didn't tape your box and you go to do this end part, and this is what the end part that I'm referring to right here, it'll go shooting out. So make sure to tape your box like we did, and you don't have to worry about it because you already did it. All right, so I'm going to fold in my ends here. I'm going to do it once, and I'm going to show you again. Don't worry. I'm going to show you in a different view where I don't have to move my camera, but I will move the guest. So the key here is to feel for the box. Okay? So here, feel, run your finger along the box, and you're just creating a natural crease. And do the same up on the top. Run your finger along the box, between the box and the paper. And now you're making a natural crease. Do the same thing. So I'm pushing, folding this in. It's like your milk cartons at school. If you go to school and you have milk at the school, it's kind of like the milk carton.
Elizabeth, the camera is being a little
okay.
grumpy at the moment, and it's unfocused. So
sometimes I'll go like this. Follow my hands.
See if it behaves.
Every once in a while, it likes to do that. At least once in a class, it'll do that.
Yep, it's still blurry. Oh, there it goes. You got it.
All right.
You fixed it. Yay.
Now I know the trick. I have to stop. All right. So remember, feel for the box. Go all the way along the box there. Yep. Again, the other one I'm going to do so that you'll be able to see a different view. Okay, so you're seeing this perspective, the top down. Fold in. Okay, I'm going to show you on this box what I did so you can get a better view too. Okay. Okay. So you go in, along the box, in, along the box. And then what happens is, see, this one is kind of folding in. Just make sure you're tucking it. Sometimes it will do that if your paper's too long, and you'll just have to clip your paper a little bit. Or fold your paper down with it. So if it gets to where it's not folding so great, it just means you have too much overlapping. Okay, so just give it a little trim. All right, now this comes down. And I'm going to put a little bit of tape there. Nicole, the medical tape is so funny because my grandma used to do that too. Where
Yeah, she
there's
had
a will,
so
there's a
many
way.
extra rolls. She would just be like, "Okay, we're using medical tape to tape everything."
I love it. Okay, so we're gonna tape the side. I've moved to glue dots, but you do not have to. You've got tape because you're smart kiddos. All right, and now I'm bringing this end up. Now, if you had long paper and you need to trim your paper, pretend like your paper came out this long. If you fold it up and it comes all the way up here, you don't need that much paper. Just make sure it's going to cover your seam right here, okay? And make sure it will cover the box. It doesn't necessarily have to come over the edge. It can. You want it to, that's okay too. But you really don't want it to come up way up here because you can use those scraps for another present, okay? So this Kraft paper is perfect for a shirt box. Look at that. I didn't have to do any trimming whatsoever. But I know that's not reality. So I'm going to show you what to do. You trim it off. And then what you can do is just fold. I like to fold just a little bit. Fold a little bit. And to give yourself a nice finished edge. You see that? So it doesn't have your cut marks. That's what folding does. Okay. So now we're going to tape that. Or glued on it. So last year, somebody in our neighborhood hired my daughter to do their gift wrapping for them. And I thought, hey, that's a cool job because gift wrapping can take a long time for a busy mama or busy families if they've got lots of things on their list. And it's double good because I know kids are always looking for some extra cash, especially around the holidays, so that they can buy their family some presents. So it was a win-win for my daughter. Okay, so I told you we go ahead and lift it up. Okay, so now we have the other side to do. This is what it looks like finished. Yours is going to show up with some tape. Blurry, but I'll let it focus for a second. It doesn't know what to do when I go. There we go. So that's what it kind of looks like finished, but your tape would be right here. So it's not pulling up. Okay. Now, on the ends here, you're going to do the same thing. Then I'm going to show you how to do it again. Remember, the idea is to bring in these two ends. Okay. We're bringing in the end. So here's our first end. And I'm going to fold like I can feel that box right there. Fold, push your finger towards the middle. Then it's going to create a natural crease right here when I move my finger along the box. Just right there. Okay. And now I'm going to do the same up here. Just like that. Okay. Again. Fold in the middle part and bring up the end. Your finger along the box. How are you guys doing on this? Are you doing okay? I know this can be a little tricky, this part, but let us know if you need me to show you a different way or if you're doing it. Okay. So the goal is to make it look a little more crisp like this. Okay. Don't worry if yours isn't. Okay. You're learning a new skill. And it's the thought that counts for sure. This is also something to consider if you're more advanced of a crafter, okay? And if you've been gift wrapping for a while, here's a little tip. Start with the bottom, end with the top. So it's finishing, everything's kind of flowing down towards the bottom. Does that make sense? So instead of starting at the top, bringing the bottom up, see how it doesn't look as finished now? But if you bring the bottom up and then the top down, that's going to give the present a more finished look. That's for my more advanced. Okay, now remember, if you get to this point and you have a bunch of paper coming up here, it's time to trim. So on this bottom part, you don't really want it to come past the box. If it's coming past the box, give it a trim or try to fold it under. So I'll show you. You can just trim it with some scissors or give it a tiniest fold. I'm going to fold mine down here just so I can get a crisper edge on the table. But I'll show you. And then you're going to put a piece of tape there. Now, every time you bring it up, you're pulling that paper. You're pulling it and you're making it nice and tight against your box. Okay, that's going to give you crisp edges. Get a little piece of tape and give it a stick. All right, now this last one, bring it down. I've got to put it on my, this is good to have a straight edge. And because this comes right to the end, I do want to fold it a little. And then we're going to put a piece of tape right here. Okay, just a little bit of tape. All right, we're to the decorating. We got the hard part done, guys. If you want to add tape to each end, you can. All right, so we are going to do our butcher's twine. And if you have ribbon, you can grab ribbon. I like to use butcher's twine because it's inexpensive and you can use a lot and it just kind of gives it a nice statement. Okay, so you're going to put your presents upside down again. And make sure I did this right. Cross. Yep. Okay. So put your butcher's twine under your present. And I'm making sure that I have a lot of room before I cut. So I'm coming way up high, which you can't see right now. I needed this much camera space. And what I did is I made an X. See my X? Kind of like you do when you tie your shoes, but before you do the tuck under, you're just crossing your string. Now, instead of going side to side, you're going up and down. And then you bring it over. Make sure you have plenty, and I do. The way I know that is because when you come down here, you want to have plenty on each side to tie a bow. And I do. So it's safe for me to cut. If you don't, just try that again. So get some more twine. Again, start at the back. Come way up, do a crisscross. And go up and down this time. Instead of side to side, crisscross side to side, turn it up and down. And there we have it. Cut it. Got plenty of space because I measured. And now, this is where you can decide where you want to make your cross. If you want to crisscross it here in the middle, again, you can for your tie. If you want to make it to the side, you can, like I did here. all you have to do is slide it just like this. Okay. Let me put this back in straps. All right. There we go. Now, what I like to do is I like to tuck these ends under this first one. That way you don't have this piece kind of hanging out. So you just tuck under. And then you can crisscross. Just like you do with your shoes. So under, cross. Then you can tie your bow. And if you have a lot left, which I do, and I'd rather have more than not enough, honestly, you can make another bow. And kids who do not know how to tie their shoes yet, this is where you could either practice. This is a good place to practice, or you could have an adult tie it for you. My son learned in first grade, I think, because he was playing t-ball. And I thought, well, I can't go on the field and tie a shoe. And all the baseball shoes have laces, so I got to teach him how to tie his shoes. Okay, so you can do your 2 or you can just do 1. It's up to you. Now let's make our cute little reindeer. Ready? I'm going to make them right here. So I'm going to get my 2 eyes. I think I'm going to make mine a little bigger just because it's a bigger present, and this one I did smaller. So I'm making my 2 eyes. Uh-oh, are we going to run out of time? Just have so much fun. I just start one at a time. This is the problem with when I get my nails done, I can't get these little adhesives off. Yours in your case might not be adhesive. So if they're not adhesive, you're just going to glue your dot down. Well, maybe these aren't adhesive.
Elizabeth, as an aside, your nails do look rather lovely. Lindsay said that in the Q&A. So.
Thank you, Lindsay. Festive.
They match your ribbon.
Ooh, they do. I did not plan that. Okay, I'm making big eyes. You can make any size that you want. If you don't have Google eyes, oh, look, I made them 2 different sizes, but that's okay because that's kind of cute. Because, you know, it's Rudolph. He's got some work to do. He's a little tired and exhausted from all the work. Okay, so then I'm going to grab my little pom-pom that I got from my toolkit. If you don't have the Creatology craft case, I call it a toolkit. It's a craft case. Looks like this. I use it in every class. You need a last minute gift. This is a good idea because, like I said, I use it every class. Every class. It's almost time for a refill for me. All right. So I got my little pom-pom. I'm going to get the bigger pom-pom. You can use any one you want, but it is Rudolph after all. So I'm going to give him a big nose. Is that too big? Do you guys think that's too big? Is it giving clown vibes or Rudolph vibes? All right. Put a little dab of glue. This is just regular household glue, but this came out of the craft case. And you're going to put the little, push it down for a second. And then I liked giving a surprised face. So all I'm going to do is make a little oval. A little oval like, ah. And then we need to make our antlers. I'm going to show you how to do the antlers. So all you have to do is make a long Y. You know how to make a letter Y. Like that. Right? And then you just make another line. That's how you make antlers. So you make a line going this way now. Another Y. And it doesn't have to be a perfect Y. And then come up a little bit. And there are your antlers. So cute, right? Want to make it darker, you can make it darker. If you already have a bold tip marker, that's perfect. And now to make a tag. This is easy peasy lemon squeezy. All you have to do is cut out a rectangle. So you're going to go straight up. Come on over. There's my rectangle or square. And then you're just going to cut off 2 corners. Boom. And boom. There. Now we have a tag. Wasn't that easy? Rectangle and cut off the top corners. Now I'm going to write who it's to. Let's see. Maybe this one should be to Lucas because the other one says to Lena. And now if you have a hole punch, you can make a hole punch or just use tape, no bigs. And then the end of your string, you could tie on. Oh, don't forget to say who it's from, of course. Or you could just tape it if you don't have a hole punch. But isn't that so cute, you guys? And so easy? You did the hard part. That was wrapping the present. Look at how quick and easy that was to pull together. Isn't that cute? Okay, so now to make the cute, do you guys want to do the elf tag, or do you want to make the, let me find them. What did I do with them? Oh, let's do a real quick. You want to make elf or do you want to make snowman? Real quick, if you have a second, just write elf, snowman while I get my paint. I'll show you really quick how we're going to do this. I know I need my white paints. Go ahead and write unless you don't have a preference. I need my white paints.
Well, we have a vote from Tina for a snowman.
All right, let's do the snowman. I'm just going to use white paint and I'm going to use black paint. You can use this, you can use acrylic paint, you can use whatever you have on hand. And I'm going to show you how to make it. Let's move this up. So this is easy peasy. When you look at art, it's really just a bunch of shapes. You're going to take your paintbrush and you're going to make one circle and then a bigger circle. So on the top, let me scooch up so you can see. Remember, my camera was acting a little finicky, so I just don't want to really bother it too much. So I'm going to make one circle here. And if you're using the Creatology acrylic paint, it will show up a little better for you, but you can use either. Like this one, I used the paint pot. And then you're just going to make another 0 or circle or oval. So it's one on top of the other. I love painting. It's so relaxing. Okay. So what you'll do then, I'm just going to put a little thicker now. And you'll have time to let this dry in between coats, but I want to make sure that I get to teach you how to do this. So what you will do is let it dry for a little bit, about 5 minutes, and do your second coat. Mine's like ghost Santa or ghost snowman. You could see through them a little bit. Okay, so just like that. Now, let me get my little water cup here. And what I like to do is use the end of something round. So I'm going to use the end of this marker. You could use the end of a pencil. And I'm going to use the end of this marker just to dip in my black paint. And that's going to give me the perfect 2 circle buttons. So I'm just going to, almost like a stamp, just give it a little boop. That's it. Boop. There's one. Dip it again. Give another boop. Just like that. And now I have 2 buttons. I'm going to close that, and right away, to make sure I wipe off that paint off of the back of whatever utensil I just used. So I used a marker. I'm going to just wipe it off so it doesn't stay on there. It's very important to take care of your supplies. All right, now I'm going to paint the cute little mouth. And all it is a little tiny U, the letter U. So I'm going to go just right under here and give a little U. He's a happy guy. Do you know why? It's snowing. So while I had my white, I forgot to make my little snowflakes. So let's go in and make our little snowflakes. And that's easy peasy because that's just some dots. Boop, boop. And if you want to make snowflakes, you could come in and make these very detailed, but dots look just as great as well. All right, what's he missing? His little carrot nose, of course, and I got his little foam carrot nose out of the craft case. All I did, and there's a whole bag of these little stickers. And so all I did was I took a little piece of green or orange. What are my colors? What are my colors? And then I'm just gonna stick it on. I just took the little, I didn't even have to trim it. If you want to trim yours, you can. If you made your snowman smaller, then you can certainly trim this. So you just put it at the top of his head. Just like that. Stick it down. Isn't that cute? Like he's so happy for the snow to start falling. And now we get to make his little scarf. And so all we do for a scarf is make a rectangle. Again, rectangle. This time I made a skinny rectangle, and I'm going to cut the rectangle in half. And this is his scarf. So I think because my paint is still wet, it's going to stick right on there. I just want to make sure not to get his mouth. Now, paint and foam is slippery, so be careful not to push too hard because it'll slip around. And now I'm going to I'm just kind of making a little X here. Now, if you wanted to, which I need to, I'm going to put a little bit of glue right here where the scarves meet. I'm just going to give a little under here. There we go. Don't get his mouth. There we go. Now, you know what would be cute? To put right here on the scarf who it's for. So 2, ooh, it's slippery. I didn't listen to my own advice. 2. Nicole. This is for you, Nicole.
Thank you so much. That's so sweet.
You're welcome. Okay, see guys? There you have your cute little snowman. Now, for the elf, all you have to do is make 2 U's of white. Use your pencil or whatever you used to dip in your paint and go boop, 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 and just 1 line. That's all you have to do. Easy peasy. Right? Oh, wow. I need $1 million because I just finished right at 7 o'clock. Who's going to be the one to hand it over? Let's see. 7 o'clock. There has to be a prize for that. All right, let me change my camera. All right, did you guys have a good time? I did. I always do, and it's always a shock. 20 minutes till, and I'm thinking, how did the time go that fast? But I got to show you how to wrap a present and how to make a gift tag. Now, don't be alarmed if your box was a different size, because that strategy works for all kinds of boxes that are 90 degrees, okay? So you can use that same strategy that I taught you. It doesn't matter if you have a short and chunky box or a long skinny box or a shirt box that I just showed you. You can do the same strategy that you just learned. So hopefully tomorrow when you see this on YouTube, you can go through and you can say, Mom, I got a job for you. Hire me to wrap all your presents. And then you can have some extra spending cash at Christmas time. All right. I hope you guys had a great time. I did. Don't forget to tag me at La Cozy Casita or find us at Learn with Michaels. And I want to see what you did. I hope you guys have a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. We'll see you in the new year where I will be teaching some more classes. Lots of fun things. So check the app. I'm really excited to teach you and see you again. We'll see you all later. Bye.